All right, get ready, because today we're going deep into something really cool.
Oh, yeah.
The world of imagination
Okay.
and rhetoric.
Interesting.
Do you ever think about how a powerful speech
Mm-hmm.
or like a moving poem can really make you feel something,
Yeah.
even though they're not really real in
Yeah.
like a concrete way?
Yeah.
We're going to explore how that actually works.
Cool.
We're using Kenneth Burke's book,
Okay.
A Rhetoric of Motives, as our guide,
Mm-hmm.
specifically part 3,
Okay.
which is all about imagery and imagination.
Gotcha.
And get this,
Yeah.
it even applies to like academic writing.
Huh. Interesting.
Ready to have your mind blown?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
I think you might be surprised how deeply imagination is woven into the whole idea of persuasion.
Yeah. Sure.
We often think of rhetoric as like pure logic
Mm-hmm.
and argumentation,
Right.
but Burke adds like a whole new dimension to that
Mm-hmm.
by showing how images and emotions are a huge part of it.
I see. So it's not just about the words themselves.
Right,
It's
exactly.
about the feelings they evoke.
Yeah, and it's like Aristotle,
Okay.
who thought rhetoric was only verbal,
Mm-hmm.
only told us like half the story.
He missed a big piece.
Yeah, and then Augustine comes along
Right.
and adds imagination to the mix.
Interesting.
And all of a sudden, we're not just dealing with words on a page anymore.
It becomes much more than that.
Exactly. It's like realizing the best arguments aren't just cold, hard facts,
Right.
but also tapping into those deeper emotions.
It's true. Think about the speeches that stay with you.
Mm-hmm.
They usually paint vivid pictures in your mind.
Oh, for sure.
It's like getting chills down your spine.
Yes.
You're not just processing the information, you're
Yeah.
really feeling it.
Totally. It's like a visceral thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though.
What's that?
Burke's definition of imagination is so broad,
Okay.
it's almost like he's saying it's everything and nothing at the same time.
That's tricky.
So how can we even begin to understand that?
Yeah, I can see how his definition could be a little confusing.
Right.
It's not just about like literal pictures in your head.
Okay.
It's more about how we create meaning in our minds.
Right.
It's everything from actual images you can see to like abstract concepts, emotions, and even just making distinctions.
Wow, so it's really broad.
Yeah, it's basically anything that creates a thought or a feeling.
So it's less about the pictures themselves and more about making connections and meaning.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound when you think about it.
Yeah, it really is.
And to explain all this, Burke uses this great analogy.
What's that?
He calls it the poetic house.
Poetic house.
He wants us to think about the difference between a real house,
Okay.
like a physical one made of bricks and mortar,
Right.
and then the idea of a house in a poem.
That's interesting.
Because in a poem, a house could be so much more than just 4 walls and a roof. You know,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
it could be a symbol for family or security or memories from your childhood, even feelings of loneliness.
Yeah, so many possibilities. It
Yeah.
goes way beyond the physical structure.
You got it.
And that's what makes poetic imagery so powerful. It can tap into these deeper meanings
Right.
and evoke all sorts of emotions and connections.
It's not just describing something you can see, it's like a shared human experience.
Exactly.
That makes total sense.
And that's where the persuasive power comes in.
Okay, how so?
It's all about creating that shared experience, using images to draw the audience in and make them feel like they're part of something bigger.
So it's about connection.
Exactly.
This is making me rethink how I see speeches and poems.
It's a whole new way of looking at things.
But before we go any further,
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about this important concept
Okay.
that Burke borrows from I.A. Richards.
All right.
The idea of tenor and vehicle in metaphor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Ready to tackle this?
Let's do it.
So remember,
Okay.
tenor is that underlying idea that the speaker or writer wants to convey,
Right.
and the vehicle is the image they use to express it.
Okay, so it's like,
Think of it like this.
yeah.
The tenor is like your destination,
Okay.
and the vehicle is the car that gets you there.
I like that.
And the cool thing is this happens all the time in everyday conversation.
Like how...
Like when someone says they're a bull in a china shop,
Ah, I get it.
you instantly know what they mean.
Yeah, someone clumsy and destructive.
Exactly. So that's tenor and vehicle working together to create a vivid image.
So it's not just making abstract ideas concrete.
Right.
It's about using images that carry emotional weight.
Like a bull in a china shop isn't just clumsy.
Right.
It also brings up feelings of chaos or danger.
Yeah. Or even humor, depending on the situation.
So metaphors are like these tiny but powerful tools,
Mm-hmm.
packing tons of meaning and emotion into a single image.
They are pretty amazing when you think about it.
But hold on.
Yeah.
If poems are all about feelings and images,
Yep.
doesn't that make them kind of chaotic?
Well,
Feelings can be all over the place.
right.
How could there be any order to that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And Burke actually says
Yeah.
that even poetic imagery that seems totally random
Mm-hmm.
is built on these hidden organizational principles.
Interesting.
It's like there's a structure underneath it all.
So there's a method to the madness.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this connects to persuasion as a whole.
It's all about understanding those principles.
Right.
Once we get those,
Yeah.
we can decode how imagery is used to persuade.
And not just in poetry.
Right. In all kinds of communication.
This is really blowing my mind.
It's a powerful concept.
So how does Burke break all this down?
Well,
Does he have specific terms for these principles?
he does.
Okay, tell me more.
He uses the terms principle and idea
Principle and idea.
as the building blocks of imagery.
Okay.
And they might sound familiar
How so?
because they actually go back to Richard's tenor and vehicle.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Are they saying the same thing but using different words?
You could say that.
Are we going to get lost in all this terminology?
No, it's not as complicated as it seems.
Okay, good.
Burke's principle is basically the same as Richard's tenor.
Gotcha.
It's that main idea being conveyed.
Okay.
And Burke's idea matches up with Richard's vehicle.
So the image that's used.
Exactly.
But if they mean the same thing, why the different terms?
It's all about emphasis.
Okay.
Burke's trying to show how closely connected imagery and abstract thought really are.
So they're not separate things.
Not at all. They're two sides of the same coin.
Okay, let me make sure I have this straight.
Go ahead.
Burke's principle and Richard's tenor both mean the main idea.
Right.
Then Burke's idea and Richard's vehicle both mean the image that expresses the idea.
That's it.
And when you put those two together,
Yeah.
you get Burke's subject, which is like Richard's metaphor.
You nailed it.
And understanding all these terms is crucial for figuring out how imagery works in persuasion.
It's all about decoding the process.
This is really making me think about how I analyze things like speeches and even ads.
It's a whole new perspective.
We often get so stuck on the literal meaning of the words.
I know what you mean.
But Burke's saying we need to pay attention to those images and emotions too.
It's a deeper level of analysis.
Absolutely.
And these terms really highlight the close connection between imagery and abstract thought.
They're inseparable, right?
Exactly.
All right, we've covered a lot here.
We have.
Let's take a quick break to let this all sink in.
Sounds good.
We'll be back in a flash to explore more of this fascinating world of imagination and rhetoric.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, we're back, and I am still thinking about all this stuff about imagination and rhetoric.
It's pretty fascinating.
It's amazing how something that seems so abstract
Right.
can actually have such a powerful impact,
Uh-huh.
especially when it comes to persuasion.
It's true. Makes you wonder how rhetoric, which is all about these big ideas, can be applied to something practical like teaching people how to write.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I've always been curious about that connection.
Between rhetoric and composition.
Yeah. On one hand, you have rhetoric with all these big theories,
Yeah.
and then on the other, you have composition,
Yeah.
which is all about actually putting words on the page.
Yeah. How do those two worlds come together?
Exactly. How do they even meet?
Well, traditionally,
Okay.
college writing classes focused on the final product.
Like the essay or
Exactly. The essay, the research paper, and of course, the grade.
Right, the grade.
But there's been this shift lately
Okay.
to focus more on the process of writing,
Interesting.
the way students come up with ideas and build their arguments.
That makes sense.
It's not just about the finished product.
Right.
It's about learning to think critically
Mm-hmm.
and express yourself well.
And that's where rhetoric comes in.
And exactly.
Okay, I see.
It gives you this framework
Okay.
for understanding how persuasion works, how arguments are structured, how
Yeah.
language can influence people.
So it's like giving students a toolbox they can use,
Yeah.
not just to write better, but to actually understand all those persuasive messages they see every day.
Absolutely, like ads and speeches and all that.
Exactly.
But there's a challenge here.
What's that?
Rhetoric often feels very abstract and theoretical.
Okay.
But composition is all about making concrete things.
Right, the essays and reports.
It's like trying to connect two completely different worlds.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Right. How do we make rhetoric relevant to students?
Yeah, who are focused on the practical side of writing.
Burke gives us some hints in his work.
Okay, like what?
He says rhetoric works best when it deals with things you can classify
Okay.
and analyze. It's about bringing order to chaos.
Like we were talking about with poetic imagery.
Exactly.
So it's about finding those underlying principles that give everything structure.
Yes, and that's the challenge for both rhetoric and composition. They're always trying to find ways to measure the qualitative parts of writing.
Like, how do you measure creativity?
Right, or the flow of ideas.
Yeah, that's got to be tough.
It's like trying to measure the weight of a thought.
Right, or the color of an emotion.
Exactly.
It sounds like there's a lot of overlap between rhetoric and composition.
There is.
Even though they approach writing differently, do you think they'll ever just become one thing?
That's hard to say.
Yeah.
They have a lot in common.
Okay.
But they also have their own unique approaches and goals.
Right.
The important thing is to recognize the value with both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Rhetoric gives you that big picture view of persuasion,
Okay.
while composition focuses on the actual craft of writing.
So by bringing them together, you can really help students.
Yeah, become better writers.
And more critical thinkers.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And speaking of different perspectives, it's interesting that Burke uses different terms than Richards.
When they're talking about metaphor.
Yeah, it shows you something important about studying language and persuasion.
What's that?
Different fields use different terms for the same things.
Right. So you have to be careful.
The key is to understand the concepts behind the words.
So it's not about getting hung up on the specific words.
Right.
It's about the ideas they represent.
Exactly. And in this case, both Burke and Richards are talking about the same thing.
Which is
how we use images to get across abstract ideas.
They're both interested in how metaphors work.
Yeah, how they shape our understanding.
And how they can be persuasive.
Exactly.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
Can you remind us what terms Burke uses?
Okay, so instead of tenor, Burke uses the word principle.
Okay.
To refer to that main idea being expressed.
Gotcha. And instead of vehicle,
he uses the term idea.
So principle is like the destination and idea is like the car.
Exactly.
And when you combine those,
you get Burke's subject.
Which is the same as Richard's metaphor.
And
again, it's not about memorizing the terms.
It's about getting the concepts.
Right. The takeaway is that both Burke and Richards are essentially talking about the same thing. The power of imagery.
Yeah.
Even though they use slightly different words.
Different words for the same idea.
And seeing those connections helps us understand the bigger picture.
It's all connected.
This is making me think about how we analyze persuasive writing.
In what way?
We often focus so much on what the words literally mean.
Yeah, the surface level.
But Burke says we have to pay attention to the images and emotions too.
It's a deeper level of analysis.
Exactly.
And it's not just about analyzing texts. It's about understanding how imagery shapes our whole view of the world.
So it's like it's everywhere.
It is. Think about advertising, political speeches, even the news.
Right, they all use imagery.
To influence our thoughts and feelings.
We're not even aware of it half the time.
It's happening on a subconscious level.
So we're like walking around with blinders on.
You could say that.
Vulnerable to all these persuasive tricks.
But Burke gives us the tools to take those blinders off.
So we can see what's really going on.
Exactly.
It's like he's giving us a magnifying glass.
And saying, look closer.
Pay attention to how those images are affecting you.
How they're playing with your emotions.
And shaping your understanding of things.
It's about awareness.
So Burke's work isn't just about analyzing poems.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's about becoming aware of all the persuasion around us.
In our everyday lives.
And taking control of our own minds.
Exactly. Making informed decisions.
This is powerful stuff.
It really is.
It's like Burke is giving us this secret decoder ring.
To unlock the secrets of persuasion.
And the more we understand it,
the better we can navigate the world.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
We've learned so much about imagination and rhetoric.
And how they shape everything.
But the most important thing is we now have these tools
to decode persuasion
and navigate this complex world.
It's about empowerment.
But before we wrap things up, let's pause for a moment.
Okay.
Take a breath.
Sounds good.
And then we'll come back.
Okay.
To explore what all of this means for us in the real world.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, we're back.
Ready to wrap things up?
And ready to bring this deep dive home.
I like it.
We've talked about a lot when it comes to imagination and rhetoric.
Yeah, Burke's got a lot to say.
From like his big definition of imagination to the power of poetic imagery.
Right.
And even that concept of tenor and vehicle.
All important stuff.
But now let's connect this back to the listener.
Yeah, how does this apply to their everyday life?
Why does any of this actually matter?
That's the big question.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in all the theories.
It is.
But Burke's ideas have real-world implications.
They really do. We've seen how images can evoke emotions,
Right.
create identification, help us understand complicated concepts.
And the real magic happens when we start using this knowledge.
In the real world.
Exactly, and I think it's super relevant today.
How so?
Because we're constantly bombarded with persuasive messages.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Think about the ads you see, the speeches you hear,
Right.
even like the news.
It's everywhere.
They're all using imagery to influence us.
Absolutely. And the thing is,
That's that.
it often happens without us even realizing it.
Subconsciously.
Exactly.
So it's like we're walking around completely unaware.
Kind of like with blinders on.
Yeah, susceptible to all these tactics.
But Burke gives us the tools to take those blinders off.
I like that analogy.
To become more aware.
More conscious.
Exactly.
It's like he's handing us a magnifying glass
I love that.
and saying, look closer.
Yeah, see how those images are working on you.
Right, how they're playing on your emotions.
How they're shaping your whole view of the world.
So it's not just about poems anymore.
No, it's about everything.
It's about understanding the persuasive forces all around us.
That we encounter every day.
Yeah, and being in control of our own minds.
Making our own choices.
That's so important.
Absolutely.
So next time you see an ad or hear a speech or even read a news article,
Yeah.
take a second to really think about the imagery.
What are they trying to do?
Yeah, what emotions are they trying to make you feel?
What connections are they making?
How are they trying to get you to see things a certain way?
Those are the questions to ask.
Because those are the questions that will help you become a more critical thinker.
The more informed person.
Exactly. And a better citizen.
It's all connected.
This has been such an amazing journey.
It really has.
We've learned so much about imagination and rhetoric.
And how they affect our lives.
But the best part is we've gained these tools.
Yeah, for decoding the world around us.
Tools for navigating persuasion.
And making informed choices.
Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through all of this.
My pleasure.
And to all of you listeners for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
Remember, the world is full of persuasive messages. But now you have the knowledge to understand them.
You've got the power.
So until next time, keep those minds sharp.
Stay curious.
And keep those imaginations firing.